today.
Hi.
Hi, Leo.
Hi, Connor.
Hi, Leo. How you doing?
Fine, thanks. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm very well. I'm very well. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you're well. So this is the first time on the show for yourself. So thanks for joining. Since it is the first time for you, do you mind like giving the people a bit of a rundown about your history, how you got into Bitcoin, how you heard and learned about Bitcoin, how you started working on Bitcoin, and kind of what you're working on now?
Okay, yeah, that's been a long time ago. So I heard about Bitcoin when it was like 1 cent or something, and was like not believing what that was about, not understanding what it was about. And I even installed the software back then, and there was a little checkbox in the wallet software in the Bitcoin Core wallet software that said mine. I was like, why is it not checked? And did check it. And when the computer just started making noise for half an hour, I switched it off because it didn't drop any 50 Bitcoins, which was the block reward at the time. And I forgot about it for another while. And later on, I joined and read about it. And when I really started to understand it, I was reading about Bitcoin every day. And 2015, I joined a Bitcoin wallet, Mycelium wallet. Many might know it was one of the very early ones on Android. And I was later on the release manager of Wallet Scrutiny. And already at the time of hiring, I told them that I really want this product to be reproducible, because I'll explain later exactly why that is so important. And that's how long I've been concerned with reproducible wallet builds. And that was 2015. And for them, I worked until 21. And in 2019, I started Wallet Scrutiny to look at other wallets and see how they are doing about reproducible builds, and started with some 40 projects listed. It was all Android. And I grew the project from there. In the beginning, nobody gave a donation. I think in the first year, it was maybe, I don't know, $50 of donations. It was not worth quitting my day job yet.
No.
But then a bigger donation came in 21, and that's where I parted with my day job, and I focused 100% on Wallet Scrutiny. And Spiral later took up the slack when those donations ran out, and here we are. And more people are working on it than ever, and it's still tiny, but there are some people now contributing to it.
Awesome. And what I asked this to everyone pretty much. Like, what advice would you give people who want to start working on free open source Bitcoin projects? Do you have any kind of tips on how to get started, or what areas to focus on, or should people generally follow, what interests them the most and kind of start there?
It very much depends on your skill set. If you're already a developer, then there is definitely some Bitcoin projects in your favorite languages. Or if you're not a developer but a designer or copywriter, there is you want to translate, you're not an English speaker, and the products don't exist in your language, then open source projects are always happy to receive more contributors, and so is Wallet Scrutiny. So if you want to help there, it's I'm always happy when I see any contributions, and it's sadly not so common that new people contribute or try to contribute, because admittedly, it's not trivial to contribute, but with everybody struggling to contribute, we try to improve it. And because when you because open source development often is like the tools that people use, and are just good enough to be faster than doing it manually the way that you did it 100 times. but the guy that comes in hasn't done it 100 times, so he would be struggling with the same steps much more and would not understand why the scripts work the way they do. And that's why the new insight from new people is always great. And they say, oh, I don't know how to do that, and ask.
Yeah, I think new people underestimate that for sure. Like, there are no silly questions. Like, even the most senior of developers may have missed some obvious things just by the fact that they're kind of heads down in a specific thing, and perhaps they haven't looked at the wider picture, so they might be missing a few things. So there's never any silly questions in kind of open source. There's always room for improvement. So. All right, cool. Thanks for that. All right, so let's dive into today's topic, today's session, all about getting to the heart of verifying wallets and their security. You are leading a project called Wallet Scrutiny. I'll get it up here on screen so people can have a look at it. If I do this one. You've been working in collaboration as well with the Bitcoin design community on this website as well. But before we talk about some of that stuff, let's just talk about Wallet Scrutiny and what it is and why you've been working on it for such a long period of time.
Well, when you see a wallet and you install it, then many things could try to steal your Bitcoins. If the operating system is trying to steal your Bitcoins and you're talking about an Android wallet, for example, of course, it would have the administrator power to extract keys where other software would not have a reach into. So other apps on your system could also try to get at your coins or swap your send to address when it goes through your clipboard or something. And these aspects we cannot really control, but we look at what the software provider, the wallet software provider, is delivering to the user. So we look at what the user can download, and we check if that is transparent in the sense that all the information or all the aspects of the app are derived from the source code that is public. So if the wallet is not does not have public source code, then we consider it as potentially 1 second away from stealing all the coins of all the users, because the provider would trivially be able to introduce some feature that leaks all the keys of all the users, and they might be good actors until yesterday, and today somebody puts a gun to the head of the release manager and he pushes the update, and Android does the auto update, so you would have to actively opt out from that, and you get the latest version, and the latest version upon installing would leak your keys to the company or to the hacker or the people that attacked the release manager in this scenario.
Yeah.
And so we cannot protect anybody from this in the Android case, because if the version that comes to your phone has not been reviewed by anybody and it just gets installed, then you have a big problem. You cannot protect from that unless you deactivate the automatic updates. But once that happened, then you still don't know is that a benign version or not. And to know if it is a benign version, you would need to know if it was compiled from the publicly available source code, which hopefully was audited by somebody who knows what he's doing. So we do not audit all the source code. To audit the source code of a wallet, you would need somebody working on it full time. And that was actually my job at Mycelium. So I was the release manager. And so I was reviewing all the code changes that other 5 developers were developing. And I rejected certain changes because they introduce maybe huge dependencies on other stuff that might introduce backdoors again. So we cannot provide audits of source code for thousands of projects, which we list like 4,000 something projects, but we can attest to the binary that you install being compiled from the source code that was published. And that is a huge step for transparency. So if now the company would try to pull an exit scam, they would have to do that in the open. And users that don't have auto updates on, and when talking about Android, I mean, if you're talking about hardware wallets, then the updates are rolling out much slower than on Android or iPhone. And so the exit scams would be really hard on hardware wallets with the transparency provided by reproducible builds. So what is reproducible builds? So the source code being public is not enough to know that this wallet is benign or to audit the wallet, because the release manager might make a change before making the new release. And just because there is some public source code that once compiled looks like the app that you want to install, doesn't mean that the app that you downloaded was actually compiled from the public source code. It might contain changes. And we attest to there not being any changes. And we do that in a transparent way so that anybody can also reproduce our reproduction of wallets.
Amazing. And that's what we're going to do in this session. We're going to take a stab at trying to go through the process of what you guys do to attest to these builds. So you have a really beautiful website here that kind of outlines some of the methodology and the processes and the wallets that have been reviewed, I guess. Do you want to maybe walk me through some of the key areas of the website and help me understand how this functions a little bit before we dive into actually doing some reproducible builds?
Okay, so you're here at the new design of the landing page. It just was released a week ago. And you can, there's the correct number. I said somewhere over 4,000. It's 5,800 products.
That's a lot.
So
where'd you find the time, man?
Well, many of those wallets were found by Emanuel Bronstein. He is scraping the Play Store from time to time for wallet projects, and many of them are not really very relevant if they have only 5 downloads or something. So this number 5,800 contains many that we would not review. Like if you scroll down, there's a breakdown on further down, much further down. So here, there's a huge block of not relevant projects. This also contains some 1,200 ones that are just that don't have enough downloads, because we don't review if they don't have 1,000 downloads in Android. With the hardware wallets, it's really hard to tell what would be a relevance criteria, because it's not really transparent how many devices they shipped or how much money is under management by these wallets. Because my main focus is not to provide you a tool to protect yourself, or that's not the primary goal of that I had in mind when launching this project. My primary goal was to protect the Bitcoin community from a Mt. Gox situation where thousands of people lose all their savings in Bitcoin and or other exit scams that happened in the past. So I try to raise awareness that transparency matters. And so the not relevant category, we are missing here some explanation what this entails. So
this means,
this is some projects that didn't get any update in more than a year, for example, or that were discontinued. and so on. So there is some of them that are reproducible Bitcoin wallets, but they are just not updated in 5 years or something. Then we don't count them as very relevant. So when you go up again, then you will not find those 4,100 ones in the other categories that you can find in the second drop down in the all test passed. You can switch to other categories. And so you see that these numbers don't sum up to the 5,800. That's because we don't find it particularly necessary to give you a drop down for products that are not actually wallets, for example. Yeah, but when we determined it's not a wallet, we just keep it as listed because we don't want to have to determine this over and over again, and maybe it turns into a wallet and then it jumps into a different category rather than not adding it at all. But if you use the search feature, then you would find all of them. So if you search for Ethereum products, then you will find many products that we consider. Like some of them might support Bitcoin. We only analyze products that support Bitcoin.
Yeah.
But many of those might just not like if you have to scroll further down, like if you go to page 5 or something, there's already defunct products that would be in the what happened there?
No wallets much. Oh, interesting. Hold on.
You jumped to page 5, right?
Yeah.
So
delete
the last letter there. The all tests passed. Yeah, we could.
Yeah, we might have found a.
The second drop down does not apply when you use the search feature. So as soon as you use the search feature, the second and third drop downs don't apply anymore because you want to find it and not.
That makes sense. No, I got you.
No hits happened when you switch to the page. Oh, there's a bug. You found a bug. Yeah, it's a new release.
That's good. So there's something to do with the pagination, but in general, conceptually, I get the idea anyway. Like you can search for different.
Can you put in the second drop down?
Second.
No. Okay. Let's leave it at that. But you see here that there's already defunct products and stuff that is
no source,
is just
no
not
source
relevant.
code. Yeah.
I'm
Only some
surprised
of the
that there's
tester passing.
None that would say no Bitcoin, but on page 2 or 3 there would be certainly some that would be no Bitcoin, which sadly doesn't work right now.
Yeah, no problem.
We will fix this as soon as possible.
Awesome. We found a little bug. That's good. Okay, cool. So let's talk a very high level about the methodology. And like we've got all this stuff like test pass. Like, what are these tests? Like, what happens if tests fail? So let's talk a bit about methodology. We've got a very detailed description of what it is here that people can go back and refer to and read and stuff. But maybe you want to give us a high level overview because we're going to actually do it in practice soon anyway. So
okay, so we try to figure out, is it a in the tests pre-run section you would have it broken down by platforms. So for hardware we look at different things than for Android or iPhone, and the order of those tests would be better visible if you would scroll all the way up and searched for a product. For example, let's look at the SBW, the Simple Bitcoin Wallet. SBW, this one. So, and there, if you scroll down, then you see the tests further down. So here you see fake is kind of a joker verdict. If we test it further down, we assume it's not a fake product. So okay, so originally I had come up with verdicts which
Mm-hmm.
meant that it was either custodial, or if it was not custodial, I would continue testing, etc.
Mm-hmm.
For more details, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe I found source code, but I couldn't compile it, and it was not compilable, or and so on. But the verdict in itself then was something negative, like could not compile.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
hey,
Yep.
it's open source, and there was a bug like today I couldn't compile it. But
Mm-hmm.
hey, it's open source. Could we just call it open source? So the Bitcoin design community suggested that we turn these into positives. So
Yes. Okay.
now these check marks. That's all the positive stuff about this product. It's actually about Bitcoin. It is a wallet. It can
Mm-hmm.
receive and send Bitcoin, because there is also those that only let you speculate on Bitcoin, and so on. So it's
And there's a
self-custodial. It's
yeah,
yeah.
there's some nuance as well around like some wallets that maybe have like a Bitcoin and Lightning portion to the wallet may have like a non-custodial self-custodial Bitcoin wallet, but then have a custodial Lightning wallet,
Mm.
and there's some nuance there around like whether it's like
Oh yeah, I
it's a
can
mixture of
comment
the
on
two
that.
almost. Yeah. So do you want to comment on that a little bit as well?
Yeah, generally, we consider them as self-custodial if they have a self-custodial account,
Mm-hmm.
which and a clear disclaimer for all the custodial features.
Mm-hmm.
So if the
Mm-hmm.
wallet has 100 ways of managing Bitcoin and other coins and whatever, and one of those ways is also a self-custodial um, Bitcoin wallet, then
Mm-hmm.
we look deeper into it. But if the disclaimers are not there, then we do not claim that the product is self-custodial. But there was a controversy with one specific product that refused to put in the disclaimer, and
Mm-hmm.
where I took the very strong stance to say, no, our website will not claim that it's self-custodial,
Mm-hmm.
although one of those two accounts would be self-custodial, because
Mm-hmm.
if we claim so, then people would use it also for the other account, assuming that, well, Scrutiny said it's self-custodial, so it must be self-custodial, because nobody reads the detailed review, and if it is in the self-custodial custodial category, then it must be self-custodial. So yeah, that's why
Mm-hmm.
we insist on disclaimers being there. And in that case, the custodial part now is much clearer, because you have to configure it yourself, and you can configure it in a self-custodial way. So we don't have that problem anymore,
Yeah.
luckily.
That's
But
good.
yeah.
Okay, that sounds good. So yeah, there's a series of tests that must pass um, for the wallet to be considered reproducible. Like, is this just a function of running like many scripts? Is there like an automated script? Does one need to go over to the source code of these wallets? Like, how does maybe that this is where we kind of jump in and kind of take people for a ride on how to actually practically do it. Does this sound
Yeah.
like a good
So
place
yeah,
to
that's
start doing that?
the if we do, well, I already sent you like some commands that we
Yeah.
could try out to get to
So
test one of the products.
let me so I'm like an average user. I want to find out if the I don't want to name any specific wallet, but some wallet that I'm using is the source code is what is being run on the source code is what I've downloaded from whatever app store I'm using. I don't really know much about command lines and different operating system environments and stuff like that. Like, how do you suggest I get started?
Well, that's what reproducibility is pretty much
Mhm.
all about, because it
Mm-hmm.
does not require you to run all those scripts because it makes the results transferable. So
Okay.
if the app is reproducible, then all you need is a fingerprint of the app you have installed. So if you have the same fingerprint and experts attested to the reproducibility, then you know that the source code is that the source code that your version was compiled from is the same version that the others got when they were looking at the product, and then you have the transparency. You didn't audit the product yet, so that's the big issue. So I'm very sure that even very popular products could put out open source that would contain key stealing features, and it would go unnoticed for a long time being, I don't know, maybe weeks. And maybe with the big hardware wallets, not so much, because there is also big developer communities, especially the open source ones. And that's where the difference between open source and public source comes in. So if your wallet provider is picky about who's using their source code, then you can be pretty sure that far fewer experts are looking at the source code than if it is a very open and open source software where other teams derive their products from one repository, where there is interchange of the code and where they need some functionality and they make pull requests upstream, and upstream gets audited by all those people because they don't want to pull backdoors into their products. So there is sometimes hundreds of experts that would review every line of change to those projects. And I guess I'm getting sidetracked. What was the question?
No, that's fine. That's perfect. Okay, I think that sets us up nicely anyway to try and attack doing some reproducible builds, give it a go, see if we can get some success, see what happens if we're unable to get a successful reproducible build, what steps we would take to rectify the situation, kick off a process to notify the team, that kind of thing. So let's try and dive in and do some practical stuff. I know we're going to mostly be using a command line here. So let's. I know you have essentially spun up an Ubuntu environment virtually for me to get started with. So I have kind of SSH'd into this remote shell, and so bear that in mind. But the instructions and things may be slightly different if you're running on a Mac OS or Windows operating system. But for now, we're just to let people know that we are
not only slightly different. So on Windows, you will probably fail to reproduce most of the products. So in my experience, most of the products are being compiled on Linux, and very few exceptions are being compiled on Mac. And there I'm getting issues reproducing also like when they do an iPhone and Android app, then I sometimes have issues with the reproducibility of the Android app for not having a MacBook for that. So
is that a bad thing necessarily, that it's kind of difficult to compile on, like many of the projects by default like are using Linux operating systems and stuff, and maybe there's not as much testing that goes on Macs and Windows and other stuff? Do you see that as like a big problem? Or
reproducibility is not very front and center for many tool chain providers. So the compiler should reproduce the same results if it is compiling for the same platform independent if it's running on different platforms. So if on my Linux I can compile a Windows binary, then I should get the same binary as if I had compiled it on Windows. But that sadly is not so much the case. So many compile tools depend on file system sorting. So if your file system sorts the files by date and or by name, but with capital letters first and then the small letters, and the other one mixes those capital and small letters, then you might get unreproducibility because you formatted your hard drive differently on the machine that's doing the compilation. And
so
others,
it can be very, very new. Like an inexperienced person might get like a non-reproducible build and may think there is something wrong with the product, or like they may not know the nuances between
the interpretation of the result is then a tricky thing, because if there is file sorting issues, then you get a huge diff all over the binary, and then you might be able to sort the blocks and find what matches, but that is like 3D Sudoku, and you kind of cannot just tell if it is benign or not. If there is a for example, there's others that put a random number in, and it's just 8 digits random number, and so you have 5 megabytes that match, but 8 bytes that don't match. 8 bytes is not enough for a backdoor. I can confidently say that this is a benign diff, but for the purpose of reproducibility, it is not reproducible. So and I put the burden on the provider to struggle with the toolchain provider and or to use other tools that do not introduce those reproducibility issues. Sometimes it's the developer name leaks into the binary. So if there is Thomas Green all over the place, then and I compile it as Leo Vandersleep all over the place, then I know that it's benign again, but it's not reproducible. And I won't change to Thomas Green to get. Oh, I hope there's no developer by that name. It's it was intended to be random, but I won't change my username to accommodate for that diff. That's not what reproducibility is about. So in the extreme case, if a project claims to be reproducible, then it should be reproducible as long as the compilation succeeds with their instructions. So if the instructions say use this compiler version 12.3, then and if I use 12.3.4, then okay, it might not compile correctly. But if I use the same version, then it should get the same result. And reproducible.org, I think is the website, reproduciblebuilds.org. They provide tools to emulate issues with file sorting, for example. So there you can use disorderfs to simulate a file system that orders the files randomly. And if your build is still reproducible, then your build tools do not depend on the file ordering of your build system, of your file system. And that's what you should aim for. And sometimes, of course, if the provider says you have to use disorderfs to enforce a file sorting to get reproducible builds, then that's kind of not nice, because then the compile time, because the disorderfs adds complexity to the build process, and what would take 5 minutes takes half an hour to build, but it's reproducible. No, but the
you do get
solution
better
should be
interoperability, I guess, between the different OSs.
But the fix should actually be to fix the file sorting in the build tools, and not to enforce one file sorting.
Okay, that makes sense. All right, so let's give it a go. Let's start trying to.
So I had tested because I don't want to get into too complex situation where I might not get out of within the show. I had tried out the keep key reproduction on this build environment, and for context, we could go to the keep key side analysis on Vault Scrutiny.
Yep, good shot. Let's where have I got my 1 second? Lost my browser here. Okay, there we go.
That's the one.
So we're looking at keep key.
Yeah, that one.
Okay, cool.
So here you can read all the details of how like further down is the analysis, and further down is how we built this. And here it says, okay, we ran script test hardware keepkey.sh with the version number. These scripts were written by us because like in the first iteration, I just try stuff out on the command line. I document what's happening, and I with try and error, I get to build the product, and then I report my results. But for follow-up versions, I want to automate this. So if you look, if you see the top link there, our script, then you see what is the essence of what I had come to for this build. So it is jump into a directory, clone the repository. If you scroll down, jump into the directory, check out the version that we want to test, download all the submodules, and then run their build script. So and when I started with Vault Scrutiny, I was not okay with this approach, because with the latest version, maybe that release build, this script would download the binary from GitHub. And it's reproducible, great. But because it didn't build anything, it just downloaded what the provider put there. But my newer stance is that if there is this script and it is doing something funky like that, then it is again on the code reviewer to find it, and the provider would be doing shady stuff very much in the open. So if nobody notices this, then nobody would notice other stuff neither. And the reproducibility is about, does the source code give you the binary? And by downloading it, it does so. And we cannot check if all the stuff that happens in the build process is actually downloading stuff that is also reproducible. So the deeper analysis and the code review would be very complex and would be required on an ongoing basis. And I would hope to get there with the resources, but with the resources we have, we are miles away from that. So as I said before, it was my full-time job to audit the code changes of just one wallet. So to audit the code changes of dozens or hundreds of reproducible wallets is a job for dozens or maybe not as many people as projects, because I have the idea that you would have experts for detecting key leakage or experts for dependency analysis, and they could do their voodoo on many projects, and so they could get some synergy, but a lot of more resources would be needed to really detect shady things. And when we detect shady things, then it's also hard to communicate it, because as long as there is no key leakage provably happening, it's hard to call out those products. And when it happens, then maybe all the users lose all the money all at once, and then then it's evident, but too late.
Yeah.
So we run their script to compile it. Then we download what they put up on their on their GitHub. In this case, it's a hardware wallet. We assume that the hardware wallet companion software would get the same thing there, but we don't only assume it, but we sometimes, not always, because I don't feel comfortable about making that. Okay, the point is the binary that you download has a hash, and we show this hash. The hash is the fingerprint of what you install. So if we say that version 1.3 is reproducible, we don't say only 1.3, but we also provide the fingerprint of the binary that gets installed. And that is actually what counts. So hardware wallets should always, in the process of updating the firmware, display the fingerprint of what is about to be installed. And
the fingerprint is just the
Pardon?
SHA. The fingerprint is just the SHA-256 hash of the binary.
That's one of the cryptographically strong fingerprints, yes. So, and providers as open and popular as Trezor removed that fingerprint check in their versions. I think that's back again, but it's for me, it's very scary when I update a hardware wallet, and then it tells me update is done. Congratulations. Like, what? What do I have now installed? Did that already leak my keys to the companion software that I had to use from the same provider? And what did I just install? Yeah. So if you are not so technical, then you might be happy when you read that you're about to install version 1.3, but 1.3 is just not enough to judge if that is the benign reproducible binary or if that is something that was modified by even the provider. Under duress, the provider might do something that they wouldn't communicate.
Okay.
So then we download that one. Then we calculate. The first one is calculate the fingerprint of the downloaded file, because that's what you should see when you make an update from that exact same file. The second, the next lines are again the fingerprint of the same file, but without the first 256 characters, which should contain the signature. Because you cannot reproduce the signature of a file. Only the author or only the owner of the release key can reproduce the signature. So the reproducibility test necessarily has to exclude the signature. And that's what we do there. And when you go back to the analysis page, I think you just jump back where you came from.
Yeah. My browser. There we
go. Then we see those results. So we see, the fingerprints differ. And
so sorry, hold on. So this is line, this line and this line, basically 2 and 3. So yeah. Okay. Right. Got you.
They differ. So
got you.
And we can try this out. We can.
Sorry, what is this first? The first hash is
the fingerprint of the file that we got from the provider. So the binary that you would. That's the fingerprint you should see when you update this particular hardware wallet, and it should tell you, do you want to install version 7.8.0 with the fingerprint 3, 1C, 1CD, D, etc.
Yes, and then the second one is the fingerprint that was actually generated.
That's without the signature of the download.
Yeah,
and the third one is without the signature block of the compiled version.
Oh, so okay, yeah. So
but maybe we can jump to the console and do all this.
Okay. Okay. Cool. All right. So what's the? Is there any setup scripts I need to run first, or can I?
Yeah, you need to install Docker, and for other scripts we might run afterwards, you can also install Node.js and npm.
Okay.
So do update. Yeah, that's for
So I'll
being
do
up to date with the remote servers. And
so apt is just the package manager for
right.
Ubuntu, or
Oh,
I guess
the apt
Linux in general.
install. The apt install line is missing Git. You would need to add Git there, like the one that I sent you.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
So
we continue
here, just enter. Yeah.
And then we have apt install. And typically, like how, or I guess we'll find out shortly. We've got about 20 minutes or so left, roughly. So we'll see how quickly we can do it. But does it vary in terms of like how long it takes to get to some verdict? Can it be some is like, oh well, the instructions were really good on the GitHub open source, and you're able to do it in 20 minutes, and some is like half a day because you're playing around with dependencies, maybe instructions weren't clear. I guess it can vary quite a lot. Yeah.
It's sometimes I never feel comfortable to give a not reproduce. Just hit enter there, or tab enter. Tab enter. No, tab to jump to the OK and then enter. No, does that not work? Should OK. Keep the local version. Should be OK. Yeah.
Yeah. So you said it does vary. Then it does vary.
Yeah. Many projects don't provide any build instructions, and then we are like that's. It's not many. So when I'm talking about we, then it was mostly me. Then I would look into what kind of project is this, and if it is a node project, then I would say, okay, I'd have to look into the package JSON, what build command there is, or if it is a React project, then I would look at other React projects, how I compiled those, and when the compilation works, then I would just see, does it compile? Do I get through? Or if there's dependencies missing, then I would install the dependencies. And this is a very slow process because I often have to do a lot of research to get around the obstacles that I run into, but also when I have the build scripts already, then running them again might take 10 minutes for the script to run, and then it errors out, and then I'm like, okay, now I see they changed the path there, and for example, the build result is now in a different folder. And maybe I see it in the output, it's in a different folder now. And then I fix the folder name and run the script again, and then it errors out because something other changed also after that. And then I lost another 10 minutes for something stupid like that.
Process of elimination sometimes. Okay, cool. And then there's some dependency. Wrong screen. There's some dependencies I need to install here. So we've got
add git and remove disorderfs.
Yeah, so I'll replace disorderfs with git, and then Node.js as well as npm. Yeah,
right.
Cool.
The Node.js and npm we would enter. We would use for the stuff for the refresh script, and not for the reproducible build itself. But we might not get to that if we don't have more than 20 minutes.
Yeah, no problem. This will just set people up nicely to go and explore a little bit themselves. But yeah, I mean, it doesn't necessarily require someone to be like a developer or necessarily have like super deep technical understanding to do this. Like people can see where it's mostly like running commands, and understanding the command you're running is obviously really important as well.
My take on this is that if a project claims to be open source and reproducible, then they should provide the exact steps to do so. And if the steps they provide are not sufficient, I find it fair to publicly say that I failed to reproduce it. And now I happen to be a wallet developer, and so I some projects, they tell me that I know nothing, and they would develop circles around me and stuff. And I'm talking about Samurai Wallet, which is a very edgy developer or developer team that don't take criticism lightly. And then, but usually I would say that whoever is even mildly technical should be able to reproduce builds. And for example, Danny, who is contributing to Vault Scrutiny, who I hired as a copywriter, he managed to reproduce wallets because, well, he knows to start an Ubuntu, and he knows how to follow build instructions. And if these build instructions are good enough, then you get reproducible builds. And it's just a thing of entering those commands and seeing what drops out, and then knowing how to run a diff on the result.
Cool.
Yeah, did the command finish?
Yeah, so that did finish.
Or is this a different shell?
No, it did finish. I just cleared my cleared my terminal. So we have some dependencies installed now.
So now we could clone the Vault Scrutiny project to get the compile script, the build script, or the test script for the reproducibilities.
Okay, so this is just a standard Git clone, and you guys are using GitLab as opposed to GitHub. Any main reasons there why GitLab over?
GitHub is,
sure
for example,
plenty, right?
I would love to use my own GitLab instance. I would love to use a Noster-based GitHub replacement.
Yeah, I've heard a few of those things being touted around. Yeah, for sure.
Let's kick off the test script. So not the refresh one. So cd-vaultscrutiny.com.
So cd.
That's no. The capital W is wrong. Like the first letter is wrong.
Okay.
It's small w. Space.
This is why
w,
I don't.
Tab.
Oh, there we go.
There we go.
And then
enter.
It's just into this.
And then the scripts test hardware key. So the test scripts we organized by platform. So this one would be under scripts test hardware, and for keep key it would be keepkey.sh. So if you just run
into scripts.
No, don't do that.
Okay.
Just run it from where you are. So just /scripts.
Yep.
Tab test.
Test
hardware and keep key. And we want to test the version 7.8.0. So we put 7.8.0 there.
Okay.
Enter.
Yep.
That's it. All right, cool. So what was I? The decentralized GitHub. That would be so awesome because currently GitHub is not just like GitHub is for a software developer is your portfolio. So if I want to know if you're a good software developer, I ask you for your GitHub. I don't want your resume or whatever. I want to see your GitHub, and then I can see what are you doing. Are you more the cleaning the code up guy, or churning out features and leaving a terrible mess behind, or like this is all on GitHub. And so the GitLab works exactly like GitHub, but a project on GitLab is hard to find if people only look at look on GitHub. So there's a huge network effect. So the developers gravitate to GitHub for that, and so you can run a mirror on GitHub to get found, and but GitLab has the same issue in the end, and running your own GitLab instance, GitLab is open source itself, would be even better and even worse to be discovered. And I think there will be a solution that would be Nostr based, where you would find projects across all those hosting servers. But for the time being, we are on GitLab, and maybe keep the GitHub. Yeah, the GitHub mirror is not getting updated automatically,
as
so
regularly.
it might be terribly behind. So GitLab for now.
Okay, so I'll keep an eye out for Nostr competitors for GitHub then. It sounds like
Nostr is a platform. No, is a protocol. It's not a platform. So it can do so much more than just. So far cannot do anything like GitHub, but there's a
potential
big bounty for fixing that by Jack Dorsey.
Yeah.
So while this builds, I don't know how much more it takes. Like I think like 3-4 minutes. Maybe not so much. So when I see those error messages, like in the first line you see error, then I'm always like, oh, something went wrong. But in this case, it's just that the Docker image was not found locally, so it had to download it.
Yeah.
And we're also
and 7.8 is the latest version.
I think so.
There isn't like a latest flag. So I know we inserted 7.8.0, but
latest was probably the Docker container where you read the latest. I can check the issue create test results. The new design. In the old design, it was all on the top.
Okay, so that finished compiling, I believe.
So and it printed out the fingerprints.
Yeah.
And as you can see, the fingerprint of the file we downloaded is the same that we have in the analysis on Vault Scrutiny. And so should be the second line.
Okay, so we got 131C1, B0FC, B0FC. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
As it's not live streaming, may I jump to open the door?
Of course, yeah. We're a family-friendly show here, so no worries. Okay,
Ich bin in einem Meeting. Kann das in einer halben Stunde passieren? Nee, kann ich leider nicht. Ich kann jetzt oder gar nicht. Es dauert nur 2 Minuten. Sie müssen auch gar nicht daneben stehen. Es ist Arbeit von 2 Minuten. Sie kommen später nicht in der Wohnung, also ins Haus rein. Weil es wird alles komplett ausgetauscht. Okay. Aber die stehen am unten seit einer Woche, also. Ja, gut, ich bin in einem richtigen Meeting. Ja, wenn Sie es sofort machen können, bitte. Ich brauche nur einen Schlüssel hier zum Rausziehen, Leder. Und ich bin gleich weg, ja? Kann ich jemand zu seinem Vater kommen? Oder? Sind Sie Vater kommen? So, bitte. Jetzt können Sie neu. Oder sind Sie Bruder von? Ich bin der Bruder von Moritz. Ich habe hier Fragen. Ach, jetzt. Das ist schon lange nicht gesehen. Jetzt. Ist gut. Es ist jetzt so entschieden von Haus zu Haus und es wird immer eine ausgewechselt. Ja? Deswegen muss ich mal irgendwie, wenn Sie jetzt keine bekommen, so, bitte schön, gell?
Und der
Das war ein Unterschied.
Hier unter den Namen bitte. Aber schnell. Danke auch. Tschüss.
Hello. You're back with us. No problem. Don't worry, I'll edit that out anyway. So no.
Some guy from the administration of the building came by and said, "We are switching out all the locks on the doors, and it has to happen now. And the information is downstairs since a week. Didn't you know that?" And like, whoa, I had other stuff to be worried about. What the heck?
And someone was knocking on the door, complaining that you're taking up too much power, trying to do reproducible builds. But okay,
that's the server.
All right. So yeah, the last thing we got to was the fingerprint of the binary we downloaded. Yeah.
So you see the AA5D fingerprint is the same. That's interesting. It's the same that the review says. Like maybe it's the same. The first 4 digits are strong indication that they are the same. I didn't compare all of it, but that's interesting that they are now the same. So there is something reproducible, but the non-reproducibility lays somewhere else. So maybe only the released version has something shady, but all the other people can reproduce it. So that's where we have to dig deeper. And that's where Diffoscope comes in. So Diffoscope is a diff tool that is very good at digging into binaries. So if the binary technically is a zip file, then Diffoscope would unzip both binaries and then make a recursive diff over the folders. And if the diff is some resource file for Android, then it would understand it and it would show what the resources are, and it makes it very easy to interpret differences. Relying on Diffoscope for diffs is also a bit tricky, but because Diffoscope is a much more complex tool than just using a fingerprint and compare the fingerprint. The fingerprint is only concerned about bits and bytes and tallying them up, and if they match, they match. If they don't, they don't. It doesn't try to do any magic. But Diffoscope does some magic. So if the 2 zip files have different compression, then it might say, the content matches, but they have different compression. But maybe it does some wrong interpretation and lets some backdoors slip through. So it's good to analyze the diff, but it is not the best tool to confirm the matching of 2 files. So Diffoscope can be used with Docker, and as we have Docker installed already, you could now run the other command that I shared with you, or the other 2 commands. We have to jump into the folder where the test script that did its magic, that is in the temp folder.
So we're going to change directory into tmp keep key firmware.
Right. And then we would, what this does is it mounts the current folder as a read-only folder, and then it runs Diffoscope on the 2 files that we provide there in the end. So if you could enter the command there, please.
So let me just make this a little bit smaller. So then we have this long kind of Docker command,
and that is just you copied a time there. What is that? 9:45. So that looks good now. So now this would just run a command and delete the container afterwards. and mount the current folder into the virtual into the environment in the Docker. And
so just from my understanding, one more time. So the two files being compared at this stage are the binary of what we downloaded from
Right.
From GitHub,
right, from the
as
release
well
page.
as well as the binary that we compiled
Exactly.
previously. Okay.
Right.
Yeah. That makes sense. Cool.
So it doesn't have the diffoscope container yet.
Yeah.
Oh, it's
Okay.
1.5 gigs big.
It might take a while.
Okay.
But yeah, again, like it just can highlight something that some of this stuff might be quicker because the images might already be installed locally, or like you might have done some of this stuff as well. So maybe on first runs, some first runs might be longer, subsequent runs might be a bit shorter because you have all of the dependencies already installed. But
no, there's wallets that take half an hour to compile. There's others that take a minute or two. Yeah. So there is great variation there. And also, for example, this wallet has a ton of submodules, Git submodules that it depends on, that it's downloading up there, and to look into all those and to see if there's any hidden binaries that might contain backdoors. This is all a lot of work for actual code reviews. Yeah, but that's where I see the next big challenge. And as many things are like, I would not trust this one, and not here, there's a backdoor. Yeah, like when I worked for Mycelium, I would often say, like, why do we need a 12 megabyte new dependency for image transitions in a wallet? Yeah, and okay, the boss wanted the advertisement to slide nicely between screens, and as the one in charge of security, I was like, okay, I don't want to depend on that library, and we figured out how to not use it. Yeah, and it's not that there's a backdoor, but maybe in the next version there might be, and if you don't need it, then this is something that I want to warn people about.
Yes.
Without saying there's a backdoor, without having definite proof of a backdoor. So that's why I want to have some expert feedback feature where people can provide feedback on products that do not necessarily prove a backdoor. They just expose some maybe not optimal strategies on security. Yeah. So diffoscope downloaded and finished comparing. So the two files are now in the first two lines that were compared, and there is a diff in the very first bytes, and then there's those big blocks, like the file downloaded from GitHub has some gibberish there, which the compiled version has only zeros.
Yes.
And this is the signature block. So this is claimed to be the signature block. Ideally, the hardware wallet would check the signature. And
how do we know that again? Because it's the signature is always the first.
No, others might put it on at the end. But that's why the test script is not the same for every hardware wallet.
Okay. Yeah.
And on Android, it's all in a zipped folder, and then one of the subfolders contains the signature stuff. So it depends on
it does vary,
platform and project.
Okay.
But so the first block is not why this is not reproducible, because the signature being non-reproducible is expected. But the problem comes when you scroll further down. There is what looks like either a hash or a random number. So
Mhm.
like the red line there starts to be different from the green line where the
Mhm.
numbers start, where there's a hexadecimal number that runs through the whole block, and that is completely different between the two versions. And from here, we cannot say what that is. It
Yes.
looks not enough for a backdoor. So
Mhm.
I would say that looks benign,
Mhm.
but it's not reproducible. Because if I say
Yes.
this is reproducible because it looks kind of benign, then that's a
Yes.
very slippery slope. Because then how about 12 such blocks? What if the
Yeah.
block is 5 digits longer or 50, or how much
Yeah.
is too much? Yeah. So
Yeah.
reproducible build allows only the signature to differ. There's people that would be even stricter and say no, if there is a signature, then it should be outside of the same file. It should not be in the same file. But
Okay.
that's
That's a matter of coming to agreement on like best practices or something like that. Like so
yeah, it
everyone
would be so
knows. Like
awesome if
yeah,
we could agree all on the same standard.
yeah.
But a margin of saying, okay, 12 digits difference is allowed is
Yeah.
certainly not a standard we will get on.
Yeah, I can imagine. All right, that's cool. All right, just in the interest of time, we've got about maybe 10 minutes or so, roughly. I want to address like one or two more things. One is so we've been unsuccessful in reproducing this build.
Right.
What steps would we then take to try and like notify the right people to investigate it or notify the team of such
Yeah.
things? Is there like a
So
process for doing some of that stuff?
the standard process there is to go to their usually GitHub, but
Okay.
some few projects also have GitLab or other repositories. Go
Okay.
find the issue tracker there and open an issue there. So there, so now
is that
it's further.
linkable
Oh no,
from
there is
here?
the
Okay, so it
there
looks
is
like
the
so we
issue.
mark this firmware version as not verifiable as far as this issue gets resolved. Okay, so it looks like there was an issue logged. Is that correct?
Oh yeah, that's yeah. Mohammed did the testing there. He's
Cool.
not a native speaker. Maybe I read that sentence. Maybe he, yeah, but he opened the issue for the 780
Okay,
build,
cool. Okay.
and
So
I
that's
added
typically
some
the
more
first
details.
call to action is like open an issue, notify the team you've tried to do a reproducible build on X version. Say what you did. It looks like he's kind of done here. Say the differences you got and
Yeah,
where exactly those diffs existed, and
I
then
added
kind of like
some more
conversation starts
information
from
there.
there. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, and then you would usually end up to be subscribed to the issue, and then when the team reacts to it, then so for example, this issue was opened on May 22nd, and KeepKey did not come back, did not circle back to comment on this, and they ignored the issue. So
Or
we
maybe
didn't
just
update.
haven't had time to get around to it. Who knows what it could be, right? I
Yeah,
guess
no,
it
it's
is a game of persistence as well. Maybe a little bit like continuously reminding these teams at some intervals that there is this issue open. When you have time, please do try and
yeah,
address
but
it.
teams usually like that. Some teams are not very happy to get poked about issues because they have their internal ways of
Yeah,
prioritizing, and
yeah, of
then
course.
they don't want to get poked about your favorite issue because they have their
Yeah,
favorite issues. But
yeah, I
I
can
try
imagine.
to circle back at times, and we are in the process of automating it a bit.
Yeah.
So we have now a script that would give us a list. No, I think it's not done yet, but we would get a list of the open issues referenced from our project, and when they were last updated, so we can poke those that hadn't been poked at the longest first.
Okay.
So and
So there will there will be some back and forth anyway between like the wallet screening
ideally,
team, the wallet team.
it would
Just
be
to,
it would be great if the provider would say, "Oh yeah, thanks for noting," because KeepKey was reproducible before, and
yeah,
when it stops being reproducible, we wonder, do they not
Yeah.
care anymore, or is it fixed in the next version and they just
Okay.
forgot to close the issue? Like,
Yeah.
could you click on the I wanted to say releases, but I don't see releases. Can you click on code there?
Yeah.
No, there. Yeah.
Releases. Oh well, no, this is the
780
latest.
is
Yeah,
the
that's
latest.
Yeah, that is the latest. Yeah.
So it's probably not fixed.
Mm-hmm.
So
a follow up required.
yeah.
Maybe. Yeah. Okay. And then in the event there's some back and forth with the teams, issues resolved, then the verdict can then be updated on the website.
Yeah, and we keep track of the history. So if they tell us to use whatever some different version of I don't know what, and then we can reproduce the build, then we would update the verdict to be reproducible for that same version and not create a new history entry. But if it's fixed in 781 or in 790, then we would add our conclusion from this review to the history. When you scroll all the way down, I think, then there is there is a version history, and then you would read there not reproducible when tested for 780, and the review itself would be about the next version.
Okay, awesome. All right, and then to finish, what let me see, how do I word this? What would you say the biggest challenges that you might face when interfacing with some of these teams? Because like you alluded to a bit earlier, like, you know, teams have their own priorities, like maybe reproducibility isn't always highest up on that list, and it does take a certain mindset to want to be open to being like quote unquote scrutinized in this way. So like, what are like some of the main challenges that you and your team face?
I think
maybe give me one or two, because I know there's quite a few. Maybe like just one or two that you think, oh, if you know, if teams maybe interacted with your team in this way, it could help push things forward in a good way.
I think the main issue is that not even developers care about reproducibility, and the funding usually is for features. So so those wallets, they get funding for integrating with this exchange, integrating with this buy Bitcoins with credit card provider that takes 15% of every sale or whatever, and then the teams, they work on those things, and then the reproducibility, nobody gives them a 1-star rating on Play Store for not being reproducible. So it's just so technical that nobody cares about, and then it gets noted. Everybody would love to be reproducible, but then there is also quite famous people that say that this is a charade, the reproducibility doesn't fix anything, which is kind of correct, because if there is no code review at all, which is the case for 95% of the products that are listed on the website, then the reproducibility doesn't help much. If nobody looks for backdoors, then you could do a backdoor in the open, and it would be there for weeks, and nobody would notice until the wallets are empty.
Okay, that makes sense. But it's nonetheless still a very important, at least starting point in any investigation that would.
It's the first step for a
The first
review.
step, yeah.
Like if that's not available, if it's not reproducible, a review has no value at all.
Yeah.
It's and if it is open source or at least public source, then the provider can never know if somebody has an eye on every update and might detect the backdoor the second it's out. And if it's an exit scam and they try to pull that off and then it gets noticed as soon as they put it in, then that that would be not very much worth it. I am afraid that there are wallets out there that currently have no clear revenue stream, that are just awesome looking and everybody loves those products, and they do everything correct until they don't, and they their credit runs on the promised gains from the exit scam. There's wallet providers that are anonymous where nobody knows who is the one that presses the button to compile that release, and that's crazy, and that is stuff that we definitely have to put some light on Vault Scrutiny, because it's correct. Reproducibility is not the whole story.
Awesome. I think that's a good way to end it there. So yeah, Leo, thank you for your time. Where can people people can find the project at walletscrutiny.com. They can follow you and some of the contributors on Twitter and stuff as well. All of the information is available on the website if people want to join. There's a Discord community as well that are talking about various things related to the project. Any final words before we go?
Thanks for having me on the show, and it went smooth after all, I guess.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Thanks for joining me, and I'll speak to you soon.
Thanks. Bye.